Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Swapnil Joglekar. Let's take a look at the stories for the day. On Tuesday, just a day after Diwali, as most of us were busy greeting each other, making video and audio calls to relatives, and sharing photos, WhatsApp went down. And not just the private affairs, businesses too took a hit. Millions spent anxious 2 hours till the instant messaging app came back to life. This glitch in WhatsApp, one of the longest ever, forced us to introspect and ask one question. Is it time to think of WhatsApp as a public service?
The journey of WhatsApp started much before it was launched in 2009. One of its founders, Jan Koum, grew up in communist Ukraine, where phone tapping was not unusual. He immigrated to the US at 16 with his mother and joined Yahoo later. So when Koum and his bright colleague Brian Acton quit Yahoo and later started work on a messaging app, one of the main themes was democratizing phone-based communication, and they did it. 13 years on, WhatsApp has become an integral part of the daily routine of almost 2 billion across the globe. And with over 550 million users, India is one of the biggest markets for WhatsApp. For the lack of a popular alternative, a glitch in WhatsApp leaves a void which is difficult to fill. Telegram has 55.2 million daily active users against WhatsApp's 2 billion. Tuesday's outage was the longest ever, as services were down for almost 2 hours. And in India, it came just a day after Diwali, as online traffic was high. People were sharing photos, making group calls to family members, and merchants were doing brisk business. In its response, WhatsApp said that the outage was a result of a technical error on its part. But it didn't come out with a detailed explanation on the exact reason behind the outage. The Indian government asked WhatsApp for a report on the outage. The center wants to know whether the outage was due to internal reasons or external cyber attack. According to reports, whenever there is an outage, the government seeks a report from the company involved. In October last year, when parent Facebook suffered an outage, WhatsApp and Instagram too were down for a few hours. Similar outages were reported in March 2021, affecting WhatsApp and Instagram, and in June 2020, when WhatsApp was down for millions of users in India and elsewhere. According to a report in The Verge, the outage in October 2021 happened due to Facebook's internal infrastructure. The business world has been gradually moving away from an email-based communication system to instant messaging. Apart from regular communication users, small businesses are increasingly relying on the platform for running daily operations, especially after the pandemic. As of 2020, about 15 million in India use the WhatsApp business app, and it is one of the top 30 most downloaded apps in the country. Organizations and businesses that use WhatsApp for communication have also been hit. Similarly, when WhatsApp had an hours-long outage last October, it hit trading of assets from cryptocurrencies to oil, before traders switched to alternative platforms such as Telegram. How well ingrained WhatsApp has become in our lives can be gauged from a report which pointed out that on an average, Indians spent about 19.8 hours every month on the messaging app last year. So, can we call it a public utility? In a Supreme Court case related to WhatsApp's privacy, senior advocate Harish Salve argued that with such a huge user base and the massive number of calls and data sharing, WhatsApp had become a public utility, much like telecom or internet service providers. and must be viewed with the same lens as them. While other experts and executives say the nature of technology is such that, even with effective redundancies in place, some outages are inevitable. As long as they are not frequent, it shouldn't be much of a problem. Let us hear more from Alok Prasanna of Vidhi Legal.
At a larger conceptual level, just because a lot of people use something does not mean it necessarily becomes a public utility. It should be so essential that you can't function without it. We can't function without transport, not buses. We can't function without electricity, not like appliances. So these are some of the things which benefit everyone, which are so essential, which should therefore be considered a public service. Let's keep in mind that a lot of public goods were also provided by private players and continue to be provided by private players. Indian Railways used to be a bunch of privately owned companies. Most of your interstate buses and even intra-city buses used to be run by private companies, and then we nationalized this. Now, the other way of saying this is it's a public service of some sort. Now, banks provide a public service. They may be privately owned, but banks are heavily regulated. Insurance companies are heavily regulated. We are sort of treating them as public services of some sort, and therefore putting a very heavy restriction on them. WhatsApp, yes, it may affect a lot of people, but it is not as if we live on WhatsApp, right? It's not as if it is so essential. It's one of several services. It's a company at the end of the day. It's owned, it's a service provided by a foreign-owned private company at the end, private, not a private company in the sense that legally, but in the sense of it is largely in private hands, not in government hands. So in that sense, WhatsApp is a useful product at the end of the day, right? It's necessary for us to do a lot of things. At best, we are consumers of the product, but it's not something that we can demand as citizens. That's the difference.
I think it would be too far a call because if we do that or adopt that analogy for WhatsApp, then there is no ending. Any private company that the government uses would then if there is a certain beyond a certain level of usage or adaptability, it could be, the analogy can be drawn that it should be taken over by the government or they should be nationalized and stuff like that. So from a business point of view or from a regulatory point of view, I think that would be wrong. But at the same time, I think in the current regulations as well as in the proposed regulations as well, the new telecom bill, there are provisions wherein the government can actually emphasize or obligate such providers or service providers that are providing essential services to ensure that there is continuity and there is no breakage.
The first step towards considering any product or service as a public utility is regulation. Experts say the Indian government is still some distance away from regulating big tech companies like WhatsApp in terms of data protection. Despite the messaging company's scale and the enormous influence it has on its consumers' day-to-day life, experts say it cannot be considered a public service. Or maybe, is it time to rethink what a public service is? Irrespective of what may be the case, WhatsApp would do well to be more transparent when things go wrong.
Indian firms are going full throttle to develop indigenous messaging apps, but a local answer to WhatsApp appears to be a distant dream. Meanwhile, the country is also trying to become independent in edible oil production. And for this, biotech regulator GEAC has recommended environmental release of genetically modified or GM mustard. But not all are happy with this decision. So what are the concerns around GM crops? Our next report offers both sides of the argument.
US seed manufacturer Monsanto, now a unit of Germany's Bayer, launched the world's first genetically modified crop in 1996. Since then, about 30 countries have taken to biotech crops including soybean, corn, tomato, squash, papaya, cotton, maize and sugar beet. India first allowed GM cultivation with Monsanto's lab-altered cotton in 2002. The move helped transform India into the world's second largest cotton producer and exporter after China. In the 2 decades since then, India has not approved any transgenic crop. In 2009, genetically modified BT brinjal was cleared for general cultivation by India's biotech regulator Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee or GEAC after years of multi-location field trials. BT brinjal was developed by Maharashtra Hybrid Seeds Company under license from Monsanto, but its seeds were not distributed to the farmers officially due to the indefinite moratorium put on its cultivation by the then Environment Minister Jairam Ramesh, following opposition from activists and some farmers. India's neighbour Bangladesh allowed commercial cultivation of BT brinjal in 2013. The GEAC under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has now paved the way for the commercialization of the country's first GM food crop. The government panel has granted environmental clearance for indigenously developed GM mustard seed variety DMH11, which has been shown to deliver 30% higher yields than existing varieties. In 2017, a similar approval had to be recalled in the face of opposition from activists across the political spectrum. Mustard is cultivated by around 6 million farmers in around 6.5 to 7 million hectares of land across the states of Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab and Madhya Pradesh. Deepak Pental, a geneticist and former Vice-Chancellor of Delhi University, developed the seeds along with his team in an over decade-long effort. Calling the approval a landmark development, Pental said farmers can get hold of GM mustard hybrids in the next 2 years if all the steps from here fall in place. To grow the seeds commercially, a final approval is still required from the ministry. While giving the nod, the GEAC has said that field demonstration studies on the impact of the mustard variety on honeybees and other pollinators will have to be conducted under the supervision of the Indian Council of Agricultural Research within 2 years. Environmental activists and the Swadeshi Jagran Manch, an affiliate of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, have opposed GEAC's clearance and urged the government to not give a final nod. Ashwini Mahajan, co-convener of Swadeshi Jagran Manch, termed the mustard variety extremely dangerous to public health and farmers.
So GM mustard was given a green signal initially in 2017, and at that time itself there were huge protests, and there were also many state governments which didn't even allow field trials to take place. So we are talking about a GMO which has not been tested in the major mustard growing states of the country to begin with, and whatever got tested very inadequately, not on all biosafety parameters, and most tests were done by the crop developer itself. And importantly, we are talking about the regulator having left the testing protocols also to the crop developer. Nothing, not a thing has changed from 2017 to 2022. Not a single additional test has been done. Gene complex that is used, they are toxic also, and there is scientific published evidence on this. And there is the issue of the genetic engineering process itself. When you insert alien, bacterial and other genes in random ways into an existing genome, the very process causes unpredictable results. So there are health impacts from all of that.
Mustard oil accounted for 14.1% of India's total edible oil consumption in 2020-21. India is the world's biggest importer of edible oils, and last fiscal, it spent nearly $19 billion, a jump of 71%, importing vegetable oils including palm and sunflower oils. GM mustard can help the country reduce import dependency in this area. India fills more than 70% of its edible oil demand from Argentina, Brazil, Indonesia, Malaysia, Russia and Ukraine. Many scientists and agricultural experts have called for faster clearance of GM crops as India's farming acreage shrinks because of rapid urbanization and erratic weather that threatens the output of staple food grains such as rice and wheat. But conservative politicians and advocacy groups have opposed transgenic technology in farming in the belief that GM crops could compromise food safety and biodiversity and pose a health hazard. The DMH11 mustard variety is herbicide tolerant, allowing farmers to spray over the crops with weed killer without harming the crops. This has raised fears that farmers may resort to excessive use of toxic herbicides, which can lead to weeds becoming resistant to them and the emergence of so-called super weeds. Critics are also concerned about the herbicide residue on GM crops.
all the concerns which are raised for fear of GM have been overblown. And actually, it is the activist. This was also done in case of cotton. And ultimately, when BT cotton was released, it was silenced. Within 3 to 4 years, it was all silenced. There is absolutely no fear of environmental contamination or anything which is safety and all that. Because since 1996, I think there is a GM canola has been already grown in Canada, USA, Australia, and we are also eating some of this oil which is from GM, like soybean. We are also importing oil from GM canola. This overblown fear will all go once you start cultivating. Once your yield goes 2 to 3 times more, and we are already importing so much of oil and all that, government is also concerned. We can improve the soybean yield from 1100 kgs linked to nearly double it, which is already there in Argentina and Brazil and many countries. In all these 10 years, because of activists, the testing of this GM mustard, which has been done, is extensively done for pollination, for bees, for safety issues. And I think nowhere in this world such a heavy testing for any other variety which is non-GM has been done.
GM crops should be introduced in the country only after critical scientific evaluation of their benefits and safety. At present, there is a difference of opinion within the community of experts on their safety. Against this backdrop, bringing about a consensus and earning the trust of all the stakeholders involved will be crucial if the authorities are keen on the widespread adoption of GM crops.
If you're flying above North India during winter, a glance from the airplane window often throws a pleasant sight. Vast swaths of fields are covered in mustard crops hanging low due to yellow flowers. Moving on, India's aviation sector seems to have left the pandemic turbulence behind. Airlines nearly doubled their fares on key metro routes, even as they incurred lower fuel costs. These tailwinds, analysts say, may boost their earnings in the second half of this fiscal. But are these stocks still worth your money amid rising competition? Our next report has the answer.
After a cool-off in oil prices, the Indian aviation sector got another shot in the arm when the government removed cap on airfares just ahead of the festive season. Airfares for domestic travel almost doubled on key metro routes ahead of the long Diwali weekend. While a non-stop round trip between Mumbai and Delhi usually costs 12,000 rupees, the fares touched 23,000 rupees on October 19. A one-way ticket to Mumbai from Delhi on October 21 was selling for 12,000 to 29,000 rupees, and a one-way ticket from Delhi to Bangalore was costing 8,000 to 25,500 rupees. The airfare surge did dent demand mildly. Air traffic fell from a peak of 4,02,697 air passengers recorded on October 4 to 3,60,000 air passengers recorded between October 19 and 25. This was still higher than those recorded in 2020 and 2021. Analysts expect this surge in airfares coupled with pent-up demand to support revenue.
The increase in air traffic is due to the pent-up demand as the economy gradually opened, rise in tourism, festival season, and the revival in the business activities. At the same time, now the oil prices have started to moderate due to slowdown in the world demand and rise in supply. Both these factors of increase in ticket prices and fall in fuel cost will work well for the industry because it will directly improve the profitability of the sector. We think that the trend of rise in demand and ticket prices is sustainable due to the robust economy and the after the removal of the price cap by the government. The sector was in losses during the year, and we can expect that they will start reporting a better set of numbers in the third and fourth quarter of FY23.
Broadly, rating agency CRISIL expects air passenger traffic volume to recover to the pre-pandemic level for the full fiscal in FY23 itself. According to the agency, in the first 5 months of this fiscal, domestic traffic stood at 92% of the corresponding period in FY20, while international traffic was at 75%. This cements our confidence for a return to near double-digit growth next fiscal. However, ICRA expects recovery only by FY24, as prolonged geopolitical tensions and volatile crude oil prices may keep leisure travel in check. Nonetheless, the country is projected to have 40 crore air travelers, including domestic and international, by 2027. The government is planning to invest about 95,000 crore rupees for greenfield as well as brownfield airport projects. Analysts say Indigo remains the only investment-worthy player, but with risks involved.
You don't have a very good business model except for Indigo. SpiceJet is in all trouble. They don't come on time regularly. There is a bird. The pilots are not happy. So the only stage is there is Indigo, but very slowly the Akasha will come. The way Indigo started, Akasha is starting. So I think competition will be there, and you have Tata Group, where Air India, and you have Vista, and they have Air Aviation. So now competition is going to be heavy. So yes, short term, what you say is right. The demand is bad and pricing power is there, but this is not enough for a long-term sustainability.
On Friday, Q2 results of Maruti Suzuki, Tata Power, Dr. Reddy's Lab, and Vedanta will be on investors' radar. Markets will react to the ECB's interest rate decision and await Bank of Japan's monetary policy outcome.
It is not just the skies. The traffic in the space is increasing too. India is also increasingly marking its presence up there. Last Sunday, the country's largest rocket placed 36 satellites in space. The successful launch of OneWeb India 1 mission was a big milestone for the country and the ISRO. Let us find out more about it.
India's heaviest rocket, GSLV Mark III, has successfully placed 36 broadband communication satellites of UK-based OneWeb. It is a significant commercial and technological leap for the Indian Space Research Organisation, ISRO. All the satellites were injected about 75 minutes after the rocket lifted off. These satellites that were successfully placed would be used to provide high-speed, low-latency internet connectivity. With this launch, the GSLV Mark III or LVM-3 has entered into the global commercial launch service market. GSLV Mark III or Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle is ISRO's third generation rocket that has a gross liftoff weight of 640 tons. It is capable of placing the 4-ton class satellites of the GSAT series into the geosynchronous transfer orbit. The rocket is mainly used by the Space Organization to launch geostationary communication satellites. This rocket was deployed to launch the Chandrayaan-2 mission to the Moon in 2019. ISRO has recently renamed GSLV Mark III to Launch Vehicle Mark III or LVM-3 because of its successful mission to place the satellites in lower Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit satellites are usually placed less than 1,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface, while satellites in the geostationary equatorial orbit are placed 35,000 kilometers above the surface. The GSLV LVM-3 rocket's powerful cryogenic stage enables it to place heavy payloads into low Earth orbits of 600 km altitude. The mission was part of a commercial agreement between New Space India Limited, a space PSU, and UK-based OneWeb Limited. The success of the mission means that India has a second launch vehicle after PSLV to offer to customers around the world. The successful demonstration of GSLV Mark III rocket's ability to carry heavier payloads will boost revenues from each launch. This success of the mission also enhanced the credibility of GSLV Mark III launch vehicle. The same rocket is currently being human-rated to carry astronauts to space under the Gaganyaan mission.
I'm backed by the nation's trusted bank, SBI, the banker to every Indian.
Scientists in India worked for over 3 decades to make a rocket that can carry heavier payloads. LV-M3 is the culmination of their hard work. That's all for today. Catch the next episode of the morning show on Monday. Bye-bye for now.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.